What's going on, everybody? James Collins with Green and Clean Professionals. Once a power washing company, now have made the turn to be a triple A agency model for AI development. And I have tonight with me Greg Hyatt from BigXMedia.net, an agency that is local to the River Valley area, Conway, Arkansas, and even closer to my house at times. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg here pretty quick, and we'll get right to the point and start talking about some fun, good stuff. So, Greg, go ahead and introduce yourself, your company, and let's get started with DNS. What do you
I
know
would say
about
that
DNS?
quite a bit. Greetings, everybody. Greg Hyde here from BigXmedia.net. As James indicated, we're going to cover DNS. Before we do, though, James, what's up with your camera? What are you using, brother?
I'm not sure what's going on there.
Kind of, I don't know if you see that flickering in and out or not.
Yeah, it's got a
Kind
little
of
bit
weird.
of a glitch
Oh,
effect
well,
on
we'll
it.
try to move along here, anyways. As James said, we're going to talk about DNS. So basically, domain names and as well as DNS. So, what is DNS? Because I think a lot of people either get confused about it, don't really know about it, don't know what it is, or everything that's involved. So, what it is, DNS, stands for Domain Name System. It is a hierarchical system that translates human friendly domain names, so like example.com, into an IP or IP addresses that computers utilize to communicate. Here are the key components because there's a lot involved with DNS. It's not just about the domain name, there's a lot more involved with it. So I'm going to jump in here real quick, just cover some of the stuff inside of what your DNS records can and cannot do for you. So you got several different common DNS records that include such things as your A record or an address record, which actually maps your domain to an IPv4 address. Then, if you step it up a little bit, you got quadruple A record or 4A's record, which will map a domain to an IP version 6 address, which is the preferred model in today's world and hosting environment. And we can jump along here to what's called a C name, which is a canonical name or a record that aliases one domain name to another. So maybe you need to do a forward. I'm going to use my hosting company as an example. My actual domain name is arcwebhosting.net slash archhosting, but I've had that forwarded off by CNAME that when anybody types in Arc Web Hosting, it goes directly to arcwebhosting.net slash archhosting. So it's kind of like a mask. Think of it like a mask. One of the more important things within your DNS settings is what's called an MX record. Regardless of whether you utilize your mail from your actual hosting server or whether maybe you use something like G Suite or Microsoft Exchange, the MX record is what directs your email to the appropriate servers that handle email. Then, of course, you got your what's called a text or TXT record, which stores text based information, which can often provide verification, i.e., for like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. DMARC is critical, especially for rely on email, because that's what helps ensure that you don't get yourself placed onto a blacklist. Because I promise you, if your email address ever gets blacklisted, plan on spending the next 2 weeks having fun and pulling your hair out trying to get pulled off of it. Google is notorious for it. Then we got what's called an NS record or a name server. Not to be confused with the domain name server itself, but the actual name server record. So it specifies the authoritative DNS servers for your domain. And then that's all I'm going to dig into right there, because I mean We go real deep into different things like your recursive resolver, root name server, and your TLD. So TLD, or your top level domain name, that's your things like your .com, .net, .org, .us, .biz, what have you. That's what a TLD stands for. And of course, you have your DNS resolution process. So think of it like this: when someone types in your domain name into any web browser, then the query is sent to a recursive resolver provided by your internet service provider or Google's whomever. Oftentimes it'd be something like 8.8.8.8 and on. If your site is not cached, then the resolver will query the root name server and then directs the query to the TLD name server. So here's a classic instance. Some people may go out to places like Namecheap or GoDaddy or whoever and buy a truckload of domain names, but they choose to utilize a different hosting provider because they just want better speed and have more services that they need to put into play. So that's where the whole DNS server comes into play, or DNS settings, because you can have your actual website domain name planted in one location, your hosting planted in another location, and then if you even wanted to, you could have your email on Google Mail or G Suite. So, I mean, that one little entity can help you route and control everything that your domain name needs.
So I right there with you. I'm technical, so I followed everything you said, but I will try to maybe explain why that's important. Um, in today's culture, you're going to have Web3 authorizations out to web servers. You're going to have um, email problems potentially if you're trying to hook up a business email to your new business. So let's say you wanted customer service at yourbusiness.com. That's where you would utilize the G Suite or a email service provider. And the way you link those up is through DNS records. And DNS records is going to be stomped on a lot if you are into anything website. Those routes that Greg was talking about, your A record, your C name, your 4A, those routes you forward and backwards and to your top level. And so, in a practical example of how I have my tools built, I have a top level domain, and then I have an app dot top level domain. So app dot top level domain, or something in my case like app dot greenandcleanpro.com, would be a subdomain. Those all still have to connect and point to each other inside of your website hosting provider. That's where someone like Greg comes in, because either you're figuring this out yourself or you're going to someone like Greg who knows what they're doing, and they're doing it for you on his own hosting servers that consistently run at 90 and up on mobile and website loading speeds, the Google standards. But you will need to know a little bit about DNS. If you're going into the AI fields like I am, you will need to know how to hook up your Google Cloud to an API to a DNS record that points out and connects your emails and connects your chat bot or whatever you build AI to your agent. Your agent's capabilities are going to be routed in this DNS record. What you give them access to, or what they may not have access to is going to overlap in this subject. So I thought we would hit this subject tonight a little bit about DNS records.
Then
Uh,
you got the next portion of that a lot of people fail to realize is when you bring in a CDN, and I'm going to use Cloudflare as an example, although with our hosting here at Arc Web Hosting, we have our own CDN that we utilize. But if you want to utilize something like Cloudflare that provides you some more resources that you can utilize, then you come into an issue what's called propagation. Because anytime you go from one point, so that's going to start at where your domain is registered through, connected to your website, then following it through Cloudflare. So when someone types in your domain address, regardless of where they are in the world, then make sure it hits the appropriate servers to where it loads all that content down. And then you start getting into caching issues, particularly on mobile, because you want that to be click speed. But now we got some new features where we can do what's called a preload on InstaClick, which means your site should just load up about a fraction of blinking your eye. But it's, that's where we see a lot of people run into problems. Maybe they've had issues with a previous hosting provider. They decide to find someone else, move their site, yada, yada, yada. But then come time to reallocate the domain name servers, and you have two. Usually on most hosting providers, there are two. You got your number one slot, you got your number two slot. On ours, it's something like, would be 1.ns.arcwebhosting.net, and we got the next one, which is your number two, yada, yada, yada. But anytime you update that through another entity, whether it be Cloudflare, another hosting provider, then you're going to spend somewhere between, and every server is different. You're going to take between 24 upwards of 78 hours, 72 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, for that to propagate through all the channels so that when someone types in the domain name, your site then populates. And a lot of people get frustrated because they think it happens overnight. Some instances it may, but the majority do not.
that makes sense, especially whenever you look at virtual servers and the way that they work with keeping each other backed up. So you have backups to the backups that still have some of your old data, and it all needs to propagate across. And it
Yeah, and
usually takes a couple days.
of course, a lot of that too depends on the. Pardon me, got a little bit of congestion going on in my face here. Depends on whether you're using shared hosting, maybe a VPN, VPS, which is a virtual private server, or whether using a dedicated server. All those play bearing into how your site propagates through the routing of your DNS.
So what do you say as a value proposition like in that area? I know what it is because I've seen the performance, but like share with someone who's looking for a website. They're thinking AI they're going to add some capabilities, maybe a few automations, maybe just test the waters a little bit, build their
Really depends on what we're talking about as far as AI and automations. So, like maybe you're using a chatbot that someone either you've built or someone has customized for you. That when a person lands on the site, your bot appears, asks some questions. Based on the answers, it then begins to branch out like a tree until it gets to the final point of how to handle that particular instance. But if you go super deep into them, I mean, obviously, the best way to implement that, and you can pull it off even on some more reliable shared hosting, which we do over here at Arc Web Hosting, our mid-entry packages. You can slap that on there, no big deal. All we got to do is change the order in which your scripts load so it doesn't affect your overall page load times with Google. Because again, and what's sad for those people who are trying to optimize your SEO and using Google Analytics with their new G4 tags and everything else, what's very sad, the very people that are grading your website, which is considered the top of the standards index for speed, their own code they provide you to place into your head section of your website slows your website down. So we have to go in and instruct the cache to load that in a specific order, but allowing Google still to see it so it doesn't affect your page speed. Which is like, really? It's very frustrating for myself that, the organization who, per se, you're trying to meet their standards, that their own code doesn't proficiently meet the standards.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we got some tools to pull from to help allocate how that code runs in the background, when it runs in the background, so it doesn't negate the speed of your website.
So what I want to really emphasize out of there is that you need a website administrator that understands what Greg just talked about. Website administration is a lot more than buying a, a template from HostGator or GoDaddy and setting up a website and throwing it out there. There are steps after that that should be taken weekly, monthly. You need an administrator to run the back end of your website, to keep the plugins updated, your SSL certificates right. But now you're adding in a whole bunch of other things like API calls and header codes for AI. What you really need is somebody who's sitting there watching their servers and who you can trust that if something's going on, that they'll fix it. Now, that's not HostGator. That's not GoDaddy. I could tell you that because I was having problems before I met Greg. Uh, what was that, 5 years ago?
Yeah,
About
somewhere
now.
thereabouts. So at the end of the day, too, if you run into situations like that, even on our servers, depending on how many resources we're pulling, if we need to, we can recage your entire website, put it on a dedicated server to where you realistically shouldn't have any flow problems as far as the speed, everything else. But for those who are more technical or pay attention to what's going on in cybersecurity, that's probably the number one thing everybody should be concerned with, because uh, nefarious folks from across the border, even some here locally, are making hits. Now, I don't want to downplay, because everything I do inside of WordPress. And a lot of people know the standard way to get into WordPress is your site domain /WP hyphen login.php question, yada, yada, well, however you do it. First of all, we build a website, that's not going to work for you using that route. You,
Mhm.
you get a very custom login address, and if anybody tries to hit that, yourwebsite.com /WP admin, it's going to redirect them to Mickey Mouse Land or whatever I choose. But they're not going to see what your actual login domain is, because it's invisible to the public. Only you have it. Of course, I get people all the time that won't log in their website, do a little work, and get their hands dirty. I'm like, man, I forgot my website login. No big deal. We can send you the login URL. Of course, you forgot the password. You will use the password reset and reset your password. I don't do it. Too much. Look, that's proprietary data to you and your business. There is some level of accountability and responsibility that's held by you, the website owner.
Mhm.
That being said, it just, again, today's world, I mean, I can sit, watch all day long on websites, the amount of hits they take from China, Taiwan, other nefarious places. But we make sure we put some pretty powerful security indices in the back end that provide me a very detailed report of where those hits are coming from, and then I just go in and block their happy butts and call life good.
That's administration. Like that's the difference between going to GoDaddy and you doing it yourself and having a website administrator professional administering your website for you.
Yeah,
And if
because
you're
normally if you go through anybody else, it's not like we're special, but other places like GoDaddy, Namecheap, I think SiteGround, a few others, you can get that service at a premium price. But then here's the problem. Here's where they get you. In the event someone hacks into your website, uploads some destructive code, yes, you've paid for the service that detected it, but now you're going to pay someone who knows how to go in and remove any malicious code or tables that they uploaded. And that
great
can be a
point.
little time consuming.
Great point. That's I've overlapped that world quite a few times. I understand that world from the cybersecurity perspective. I have um, decade of experience in that field and working for the biggest company in the world doing it. So there's there's a lot of overlap with what Greg's saying right here with real world principles in real world companies. And I know I probably have Johnny Plumber on here going, but I send messages through Facebook and I don't use my website and I don't do this. Listen, Web3 is coming. It's almost here.
It's already out in beta.
It's out in beta. So Web3 is going to kick your thing. It's not going to be a day for you. You're gonna be humbled. So stay up to date on what Greg and I are talking about. And if you need to pivot your website, your business site, care if you're a millionaire or Johnny Plumber, I really don't. You need this. This is where you start, right here with Greg, Big X
Key,
Media.
and I think we've stressed this the last few times, but it's worth repeating, and that is, you got to evaluate how seriously or what your business means to you. The website aspect of it needs to be left to myself to ensure that it's being pushed forward and promoted and being well maintained. It's kind of like an exotic car. The thing that keeps an exotic car going is top of the line maintenance and making sure that your maintenance is done on a priority timeline repetitively, not just hit and miss. And that's something that we schedule out on every website we host that has one of our maintenance packages on it. Because every morning when I wake up, and not even every morning, but if I get an alert on my phone that someone's website's been hit, hacked, and taken offline, my happy butt will get up at 3 a.m. and go take care of business, bring you back online, and go take my happy self back to bed. Because that's not going to happen in this world, okay? Might happen somewhere else, and that's the difference between dealing with a, a smaller hosting provider who has all the same tools as all the big dogs do. The only difference is you don't have to wait in a queue while you're on the phone that'll tell you, well, your hold time is 20 minutes. We don't play that game. You call us, I'm on the phone with you probably in, I don't know, 3 seconds maybe, depending if I'm during business hours up or if it's nighttime. Man, give me a minute, I'll roll around, dive in, take a look, get you resolved. Especially if you run anything that's e-commerce related to where people can order stuff from your website all day long, 24 hours a day. Nothing worse than an e-commerce site going down and you don't know. How many sales may you have missed?
Great
There's
point.
just a lot of variables in there.
Great point. There are a lot of variables in there, and when it comes to somebody getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't find that in a bigger company. Not for your website. And if you didn't know, yeah, you're right. You could have missed a bunch of sales.
I
If sales
promise you, you go to GoDaddy and having Many, many moons ago. Been there, done that, made that mistake. But when you go to call in, they only have restricted business hours for the vast majority. Now, you can get that 24-hour concierge service level if you want, but it comes with a premium price. But there's standard customer service Monday through Friday, normal business hours, and maybe a half a day on Saturday. Now, keep in mind, GoDaddy, I don't know how many customers they got, maybe hundreds of thousands. But if you get, 5,000 people calling in with similar situations that's hitting a specific department, and, you're listening to the whole, your approximate wait time is 20 minutes. Tick, 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 tick,
Throw
tick,
my phone through the TV.
right? And then, and I'm not trying to, I don't want this to sound racist because it's not meant to, but let's face facts. Many times the person you're going to speak to is not based in America when you deal with a company that big.
Understood.
Then you got the challenge of, can you understand them? But more importantly is, can they understand you? Which you hope they do. So I mean, you got that aspect of it, which is one thing we don't, we don't face that problem here, since we deal with a lot of primarily local customers. We're not just restrict Arkansas. I got customers across all 50 states for the United States of America. Do have several that are overseas as well. So we got different protocols for them to make sure they're properly taken care of, because obviously their time frame is way different than here. But nonetheless, we make sure everybody's taken care of. Nobody's going down, and nobody's losing business. But more importantly, nobody's getting hacked.
Hmm. And by the time this is over, as I release my tools, I will likely have Greg in my side as someone who tests what I do. So he won't miss your phone call. If he does, then I fail. So with that, Greg, at 7:27, I'm always respectful of time. It's been 30 minutes, and I want to say I do appreciate all you've done for me. There's no doubt that it's your fault that I have a number one website. And next level, guys and ladies, that you think that you're going to pass through this next level without touching your website with Web3, think again. You dreaming. You need to understand DNS records at a small level so you can maybe reroute your site and to Greg, or maybe into a testing environment so you can add in some new capabilities.
That's the other thing too. When you speak on that, obviously, when you get your site completely polished to the point of where you want it, but then we run backups on your site. Because
Mm,
in the event anything should go funky monkey, we've got daily backups and can set your site ablaze again from a server to push it back live. But more importantly, come time that you want to make some modifications to that website, you want to have that ability to create a staging environment of your current website, make the changes, test it down there. Never, never, never push anything live until you make sure everything works. Then push it forward to the primary domain name. I mean, like I said, just some little things. And look, I'd say in the past year, things have changed so dramatically, particularly in image formats. What's the best format to utilize on the front end? Compression, running fonts locally, which a lot of people don't do. They just pick and choose a font with whatever application they're using, which will, believe it or not, a Google font, and you would think that it wouldn't slow a site down that much, but when you're using three, maybe four different font classes, different properties, which would be your weight, so bold, semi-bold, oblique, italic, normal, light, whatever. Start adding three and four different fonts in there, plus all that, your site takes a hard hit just in the speed. But I'm going to shut up now, let James close us out. Hopefully, we get to dig in some other entities the next time we get to come together.
yeah, I guess Tuesdays is a good day. Wednesdays, right now, I'm really pushing to get YouTube subscribers. I need 1,000 of them as quickly as possible, and then I would really
Not
bet.
really. I get your point, but no, you don't.
No, I don't.
No, you don't. What you need is a channel sponsor.
A channel sponsor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get where you're going with the 1,000 subscribers because that's when
Mm.
monetization rolls in and starts playing effect. You don't need to wait on that to happen.
All
You
right.
find somebody who wants to be a channel sponsor based on the material you're producing and let it roll from there. That way you're not pressured to hit that 1,000 because you can still start to generate that residual income based off sales of their product.
So we're building a business here, an agency, and it's only 9 days in, but its primary purpose is a support role for those looking to start using business automations and advanced marketing techniques with AI tool sets. I've optimized a lot of those, and I'm doing content every day, so I can help get ahead of this curve because Web3 is going to take some people out.
Yep.
It's just a matter of time before GDPR regulations come down, and you have to have a cybersecurity scan of your website every year. And yeah, it sounds easy just to pay someone, but it's
Uh,
not easy.
speaking in GDPR, and I caught this on a video I watched a couple days ago. For those having websites in the United States who do or may attract visitors, customers, whomever from the state of California, state of Florida, and I believe Colorado is in that mix, you have to have that pop up on your website
Mm-hmm.
with ways for them to opt out of any collection of their data. If you do not,
Mm-hmm.
you put yourself in the line of fire for potential lawsuits. Just throwing that out there. Do with that knowledge what you will, but beware if you don't.
You heard it here. That's what we're talking about. We're trying to get all this information to you just because we talk about these things on a daily basis because both of us are in the tech worlds. Um, it's it's common talk to some of the people at my level, but it's not at the family level. And grandma's getting left behind here in Web3. You know, if she has a business with her husband that's a small heating and air conditioning unit business, and they've been around for 100 years, and their their website is 25 years old, and they just haven't had time to update it and don't really want to because they have good customers locally. Well, you you really don't get the magnitude of every little drip a customer gets, whether it's your website or each one of those times that you get in front of a customer is the more of a chance that that customer will choose your product.
Yeah, exactly. The more places a customer can turn to find you, whether that's directly off of a web search, through any of the social media networks, pick your flavor. Don't get me wrong, word of mouth is great. But let's face it, everybody in today's world has a mobile device in the palm of their hand, probably the majority of the day. And it's usually the first device they turn to when they get on the web looking for something. Now,
And
granted, you
they'll
got
have,
your,
just from my perspective, they'll have uh, every company that is using artificial intelligence in their systems and in their operations.
well, and
When
there's the
they
next
open their
thing.
phone and say heating and air conditioning, if in Web3 world you're not updated, you don't show up. It don't matter if
Yeah,
you've been number
that's
one.
a valid point too. Also, is to making sure your website is ready and enabled for any of the voice search assistants,
Mm.
whether that be Alexa or The S gal, which I won't say her name because all my devices will light up like little Christmas trees,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and Google's version of that. But more and more, just like now, the first place I go, I'm starting to check where a website positions itself. Is I'm going to ask my S person on my Apple device for a specific item. So in James' position with the company he just sold, if I told her to find me the best professional pressure power washer or power washer, Russellville, Arkansas, I can assuredly guarantee his site will populate in the first three without even having to look at it. It's the same thing when I check BigXMedia over in Conway. Same thing. So, because people are relying, especially in the Apple ecosystem, with AI being pushed out a little bit more and more with each one of their new iOS updates. The next major one, James, you'll be interested in this one, is because Siri will become much more conversational than just kind of a hard command, if you will. She's become more
Understood.
fluent in the conversations, and particularly uh, for those who might utilize something like ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or Opus or whatever. But then you can use the S person to reach out to ChatGPT 4. Even better if you have a paid account with them, and it's not an automatic thing because she's going to ask you, "Do you want me to use ChatGPT to answer this for you?" And you click on the little tab at the top, yes, continue, and life moves on. And the results you get, I mean, if you're going in for some deep research between Apple, GPT, and a few others, sky's the limit.
There's nothing you can't know. So what that does is it bridges skills gaps, guys. It does. It bridges someone like me who's been in computer programming for 2 decades and was a professional in other fields for a long time too. And now an 18-year-old can edit video as good as I can. Now they can come through and program a computer as good as I can. They have
Well,
that capability.
and not only that, and James can attest to this. Look, years ago, anybody that wrote code, you'd done it in something like maybe, what was it, James, CSS plus,
That
Note
CSS.
C or Note plus plus, whatever it was a code editor. And there are several out there that you can use to write whatever kind of code you're writing, whether it's CSS, PHP, JavaScript, uh, JSON, what have you, and compile it. Then you got your compilers pull it together. Now you go out to something like Claude. Now I'm not a hard coder. I can do some pretty good PHP, CSS, and HTML and a few other lines. But I can go to Claude, type in what I want something to make for me,
Mm.
and I probably can get it pretty close to being done without having to dive a lot deeper into it. And if
Um,
even if I do, I can ask it, can you refine this process a little bit more? Because once you pull the code, put it into a code editor, compile it, test it, find out where the error's at, go back to Claude and say, work on this one because here's the error I ran into. Then Claude will rerun that for you with an adjusted version. Now, is it perfect 100% of the
oh,
time?
VS Code's got Copilot, so
Exactly.
it's already integrated. So if you get it that far, you get your software program mostly written. You put it in your code editor, then you got Copilot on the other side, Microsoft's, and all you gotta do is tell it what you want. Now it'll code for you too. So we have bridge skills gaps, and cybersecurity in Web3 is going to be different. It's
I'm
not going to be
not
it'll
sure
be
if
node to
James
node.
don't know if James will agree with me or not, but I'm here to tell you. If you're not willing to dive in this and learn it, now look, I'm not saying you have to master it, but you need to start to learn it, understand what it may or may not do for you or your business. Because if you don't, someone else will, and they're going to blow you out of the market. Plain
That
and
was my
simple.
point. It thousand X's your business capabilities. That is a possibility, 1,000x. That means that you have young entrepreneurs that know how to use this technology and they can start a little business, and Johnny Plumber's gone. Because every time this person even looks at their phone, it's already knowing they're looking for plumbing. And this young individual has figured out a way to target that customer so well that there's nobody else that they're going to see but them. And you do that to every single customer where you're the first one they see, and every time they go somewhere else, they see you again. That's going to start building on your credibility real quick to that new customer that you're trying to get. And then you have AI on the other side nurturing the leads, sending out drips of good information, value, things that mean something and have purpose to that customer because it's asked them the questions. It's got to know them, and now it's sending them birthday
Well,
cards.
not only that, not only the needs of the customers, but more importantly, the need of the business owner. Because if
That's
you're
very true.
a solopreneur, maybe you don't have the staff or the time to manage all that data that's being pulled in, whether it's a website, through your business phone line, email, what have you. But now you can have AI in the back end helping to delegate all of that and reply and handle it, and only providing you as the business owner with things that require immediate action.
Hey, that's where I come in. That's what I build, and I apologize to the people that are scared of artificial intelligence. It's if I become the problem because of me building it, I want you to know that I'm here giving you this information because to stay in relevance as a business, you need to know this. That's what I'm
Well,
coming at you with. And
and
hopefully you're listening.
I think a lot of people got scared because some people took the word or phrasing AI or artificial intelligence and really tweaked it out and made it sound like something of and it is sci-fi, kind of, sort of, but they really brought on a lot of unnecessary fear to people who may not be as computer literate or up to today's technology standards. But in all realisticness, we've been using AI as long as you've been able to. I mean, for the older folks, how long have you heard, press one for English, press two for Spanish when you call, a business, whatever? That's been around for what? I don't know, 30 years?
It was just really, really,
That's
really
that's a
expensive.
form of AI.
Yeah,
It just wasn't called AI.
that's true.
But it's just that things have progressed with the tools, through the coding, through the power of the more powerful chipsets that have been created. Uh, I mean, just, I mean, I remember back in the day when computers were the size of full size gymnasiums. When you start going to military installations, would take up a whole building. Now my Mac Mini is about the size square of a Apple TV box, literally,
Mine
and
too, and I
and
run
that
dual
is
boot Linux on mine. I got
and is as
all in my
powerful
hand.
as anything that you know. I can beat that thing up as hard as I want to. So,
Yeah,
folks, just take it a step at a time. Can it be a little overwhelming? Absolutely,
sure,
but you learn things in nuggets. Then you find out what it does for you. Then you continue to build upon that stack. That's where James comes in. That
and
help guide you through that
the
process.
stack right there, and then community. I want to really stress that as you start getting ideas, maybe this is going to affect you type of ideas. Then just know you got an agency here with Greg, and he's not here to catch you and take all your money out of your pocket. He's here to help you, as am I. That's what we're here to do, and we're not coming from you from the government saying we're here to help. This is just two guys in Arkansas who
Yeah,
I do AI.
those are 9 words you will never hear fall out of my mouth. I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
That's
Will
right.
not will not apply.
Oh, although I've been a government contractor for almost
Well,
all of my adult life.
well, both of us have pulled our fair share wearing uniforms of varying colors.
Yes, sir.
You've had the privilege of actually being a GC, so you got a little bit more insight on that side of the world. But you know what? You just got to know that there are actually people out here who, I know mine and James' mission is to help build you and your business up. If we get to the spooky parts and you say, slow down, well, we'll slow down. But we want to see you be
Oh, that
successful
was
and to be able to
perfect, Greg.
grow.
Yeah, that's perfect because that's what it's going to feel like. Because I felt that feeling already a couple times in a subject or two. You start thinking about providing for your family and what that looks like in 2 years from now, and I guarantee it's different than what you're looking at this second. It's not going to look the same. I can promise you. And there's going to be a lot of innovations and there's going to be a lot of changes to where cell phones, Facebook, the ways of the past, and collecting data are going to be obsolete within 2 years.
Uh,
Computers.
a- and real quick, because I don't know if you've seen it or if you monitor chat or not, but to answer Galaxy Pedals,
Oh, that's my buddy
Web
Chris.
yeah, Web 2 is very interactive. Web 3 is on the blockchain. Yes, it absolutely is on the blockchain. Is in uh, beta release, and different entities are currently working within that model. And I really look for Web3 to start becoming the primary flow of traffic about August. I'm pretty convinced everything floating on the web will be on Web3.
And that means something. I don't even know what all that means. And so I felt that feeling that Greg said. I had to go research myself.
Well, not only that, but if you remember when we started with even simple things back in the day, like going from a traditional HTTP website and then start implementing some security protocols that brought on the HTTPS protocols,
Hmm.
and how that kind of rolled out and migrated. And of course, and even today, it's still something that I run into occasionally where people will run into, like, oh, I'm still getting errors on my website saying that maybe some images or whatever they upload was not in a HTTPS format. So when you look at your, oh, give me a second here, your canonical URLs. So basically, when you type in something, or if you found an image on a website, right click on it, open up the image in a new tab. It should have the HTTPS, your website name, / media file, whatever the name of the media file is, and its format. But if your whole site is HTTPS and you upload that image from a non-HTTPS environment,
Right.
it creates a calling conflict
Mm.
and you start to run into some issues. So then you got to download the image, convert it to the appropriate format, and then upload it from an HTTPS environment back into your website, and everything's golden as a goose.
That's why you have an administrator, folks. I'm stomping on it. You need an administrator in this next level. There's enough data coming at you that you don't need to try to. Uh, my opinion, just my opinion. I'm not going to try to do it. I'm going to be trusting somebody to work with me as a team. That's where community comes in. Um, at least I'm not going to be the solopreneur out here hosting my own website and having no accountability. Not with the next changes coming because they're coming so fast that how do you keep up with that? You can't. But you and 25 other people can. And you guys come together every now and again and talk about it, try to figure this out before it gets here.
Well, and you hit a valid point too about the whole community thing. And I think once this begins to grow for you, getting that website where you can have that community environment where it's
Mm,
behind a kind of a locked down arena for those, whether that be through a paid subscription, what have you.
mm,
It doesn't make a difference. But then to be able to share those ideas, because you always got to have a place to share them. Don't get me wrong, Facebook chat's okay. The GitHub, if you're going to plant code, I do like GitHub, and I seen you mention that, and I don't know if you was aware, but if you find something that works for you, rather than just downloading it from the repository, is
Hmm.
to take that and fork it.
Fork it. Yeah, we went over that. I backed up a second and said, "Let me slow down because I sometimes forget where other people are in their journey, and this may be the first time they've seen GitHub." So I
Yeah,
went
well,
back and said, "We
the
need to
advantage
fork."
to it too, though, is that when you fork it, if you know in advance you're going to do something like rewrite it
Mm-hmm.
into more of a custom situation for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then come time to implement it, if you're pushing it to a server or if it's being pulled through an API key, that just makes maintaining the file structure easier.
It does. It really does. And I'll tell you another secret weapon I got. And I work with some of the best in the world, I promise you. When I say that, they're good at what they do. And in the information technology world, I ask questions sometimes about, what are you using on your server architecture? What are you doing here and what are you doing there? Docker. I used to talk about this more than I do now, but Docker has came out with the best updates that I've seen in a long time. And you can run Docker desktop and it looks like GitHub. But what Docker does is where GitHub spins up code and you can run maybe an application in in the interface that we talked about yesterday, where GitHub does that, Docker does it with like a whole computer system software. So you could go out and just spawn down unlimited images, virtual images that you've built that is specific to your customers or whatever. You're storing your code, you got everything in your software configuration management plan, your overall records management's in order because you have a repository now that you can report the changes in that code from the beginning to the end. And now that's starting to sound like the life cycle of data for your customers. Trust me, this is important, guys. Stick with us. We're going to try to break this down into ready made applications and things that we're doing personally and share these with you along the way. So maybe, just maybe, you won't get hit by the
So
Mack
you,
truck coming.
yeah, you take something like maybe a uh, either a dedicated server or a virtual private server, and all of our servers are run on light speed servers. That is our core foundation of every one of our server levels. So if you take that, maybe a VPS, and then implement Docker in on top of that,
Mm,
so you got the speed, the security, the application processes to build, pull, push, what have you. It's kind of a win-win situation.
I just had a little heart thump. That sounded good to me. I like it when it's right like that. On that
Uh,
note, 7:54, we went 30 minutes over. Yeah, I hope value was found here today. And just know we're with you. We're not talking down on anybody. We started our journeys a couple years ago, just barely dipping our toes in the water, looking at some of these higher end topics that we're talking about, like DNS routing and VPS and Docker desktop and GitHub, and now putting subdomains and best practices so your Web3, you got to snake your Python. If I know that sounds terrible, but you got to detail all the software that you use in GitHub as a record. So you know exactly what version of software is there in a requirements.txt file. That's important just to do in general. Even if you're not using GitHub, You should have software revision management. You should have document revision management, customer lifecycle management. Those things are very important in the next iteration of business. That's
And
what I would
I got
say.
to jump on this one real quick before you cut us out of here. And you hit on a valid point. It's the one thing I look at in any software application I use is the last time it was updated and the frequency of the updates.
Mm,
Because if it's an application, whether it's a SaaS based product, whether it's a hard install coded product, what have you, I want to know that the developer is actively updating and implementing new changes to make it better. And
right.
that's where that whole GitHub and a lot of other different things come into play. Because you look up there, it'll say last revised. You know, gives you the date, the version number, what have you. But anyways, that's it for me. I'm out, James. See you, brother.
Hey, Greg, it's always a pleasure. Definitely next week on Tuesday, and if we can grab a maybe a Friday night or a Sunday night or something, if you're looking to talk, just
14th,
let me know.
definitely the 14th will be, I'm out of pocket. I'll be in Little Rock at Verizon Arena enjoying Winter Jam with my son.
Hey, well, you enjoy that, and always, as always, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to everybody who's here now, who joined in later. You could be anywhere, but you're here, and we appreciate you sticking with us and listening to us this long. Drop who you are and where you're from in the comments. Let's start building a little community. Uh, just anything, please. Uh, Let us know you're listening, and we'll start tailoring a little bit more of our conversations to who's
And I'm going to
listening.
get James to start saying this. If you're on the tube, the YouTuber
That
watching
too.
us, thumbs up, hit that like button,
Yes.
please subscribe,
Mm-hmm.
and leave a comment. If if you do those three things, you will have a larger impact on James' new diving into the YouTube world.
Yeah,
So much better.
it will, and that's the truth. And I would greatly appreciate it as well. And on that note, have a great evening, everybody. I'm going to play this intro I made for you again. Good night, everybody.